My name is Becky Anderson, 32 years old, and working as a financial analyst in Boston. I always thought family meant trust and loyalty until that night last month when my world turned upside down. The soft click of my bedroom door at 2 a.m. should have woken me, but exhaustion from my promotion celebration had pulled me into deep sleep. By morning, $20,000 had vanished from my account. Before I share what happened next, drop a comment telling me where you are watching from, and hit subscribe if you have ever been betrayed by someone you love. Growing up in a small town outside Boston, I learned early that nothing comes easy. My parents, hardworking middle-class folks with traditional values, instilled in me a fierce work ethic from day one. Dad worked as a high school math teacher, Mom as a nurse at the local hospital. We were never poor, but definitely not wealthy either. Just comfortable enough that we didn't worry about necessities, but luxuries required saving and planning. I was always the responsible one. The daughter who brought home straight A's, worked part-time jobs through high school, and earned a full scholarship to Boston University. My degree in finance led to my career as a financial analyst at Preston Global Investments, where I spent 8 years climbing the corporate ladder. Nothing was handed to me. Every promotion, every raise, came from dedication and countless late nights. Then there was my younger sister, Emma. 9 years younger at 23, she was the surprise baby who became the apple of our parents' eyes. Where I was studious and serious, Emma was vibrant and social. Where I saved money, Emma spent it. Where I planned for the future, Emma lived for the moment. Our parents never seemed to notice how differently they treated us. With me, expectations were always sky high. With Emma, simply passing her classes was cause for celebration. When I messed up, consequences were swift. When Emma messed up, excuses were made. Not that I resented her for it, not really. I loved my sister, despite our differences. I just wished our parents had been as understanding with me as they were with her. "Becky, you need to be patient with your sister," Mom would say whenever I expressed frustration. "Not everyone has your drive. She has other gifts." Emma's other gifts included an uncanny ability to charm her way out of trouble and a talent for spending money she didn't have. By the time she dropped out of community college in her second year, I had already bailed her out of 3 maxed-out credit cards and paid 2 months of rent when she spent her money on festival tickets instead. This is the last time, I had said each time, only to cave when she called crying about how she would be evicted or her power would be shut off. My best friend Jenna warned me repeatedly about enabling her. "You are not helping her by solving all her problems," she said during one of our weekly coffee meetups. "She needs to learn responsibility." "I know," I replied, stirring my latte absently, "but she's my baby sister. What am I supposed to do? Let her be homeless?" Jenna gave me that look she always did when we discussed Emma. There are options between bailing her out and homelessness. She could get a roommate, or move back with your parents, or actually budget her money. I knew Jenna was right, but breaking the pattern was harder than it seemed. 3 months ago, Emma showed up at my apartment door with 2 suitcases and tears in her eyes. Her roommate had given her notice because she couldn't afford the rent on her own anymore. Her job as a part-time barista barely covered her phone bill and going out expenses. "It's just temporary," she promised, those big brown eyes so much like our mothers looking up at me imploringly, "just until I find something better." 2 months tops. My apartment wasn't huge, a 2-bedroom I had furnished carefully over years, each piece chosen for quality rather than following trends. I liked minimalist design, clean lines, and neutral colors. Emma's style was more eclectic, with bright colors and mismatched patterns. Within days, her presence had transformed my orderly space with scattered makeup products, clothes draped over furniture, and dirty dishes left in the sink. I tried to be patient. I really did. I created a chore chart, offered to help her look for jobs, even reached out to contacts about entry-level positions. Emma would nod enthusiastically at my suggestions, then promptly return to scrolling through social media or going out with friends. Then there was our cousin Sophia, Uncle Robert's daughter. At 25, Sophia lived a life that Emma envied desperately. Designer clothes, luxury vacations, a sleek downtown apartment paid for by her parents. Uncle Robert had made good investments early in tech companies, allowing him the means to indulge his only child. Sophia and Emma had always been close despite, or perhaps because of, their different circumstances. Where Emma saw a glamorous life to aspire to, Sophia seemed to enjoy having someone who admired her lifestyle so openly. They were constantly tagging each other in social media posts, planning outings that I knew Emma couldn't afford, and sharing inside jokes that made me feel like the stuffy, older relative rather than just a sister. The week before everything happened, I finally received the promotion I had been working toward for years. Senior financial analyst with a substantial salary increase, more responsibilities, and new perks including a corporate credit card with a $25,000 limit for client meetings and business expenses. I was ecstatic. 8 years of 60-hour weeks, of taking on extra projects, of being the first in and last out had finally paid off. My parents hosted a small dinner celebration at their house. Dad grilled steaks, Mom made her famous chocolate cake, and even Emma seemed genuinely happy for me. "This calls for champagne," Dad announced, bringing out a bottle he had been saving for a special occasion. To Becky, who has always made us proud. I noticed Emma's smile falter slightly at those words. Had our parents ever told her she made them proud? I couldn't recall a specific instance, but surely they had. I made a mental note to talk to them about it privately. During dinner, Emma's phone kept buzzing with text messages. She would check it, smile, or frown, then type rapid responses. When Mom asked who she was texting so urgently, Emma replied it was Sophia, planning something special. "She's taking me shopping this weekend," Emma announced. "Says I need a wardrobe upgrade for job interviews." "That's nice of her," Mom said warmly. "You two have always been so close." Looking back, I should have noticed how Emma kept glancing at my purse, hanging on the back of my chair. I should have registered how she asked unusually specific questions about my new position, particularly about the corporate card. I should have been suspicious when she volunteered to drive me home because you should celebrate properly and have an extra glass of wine. But I didn't notice any of those things. I was riding high on achievement, on finally reaching a goal I had worked so hard for. When we got back to my apartment, Emma was uncharacteristically attentive, making me tea and insisting I put my feet up. "You deserve to relax," she said, fluffing pillows on the couch. Big sister finally getting the recognition she deserves. I was touched by her consideration. Maybe my promotion was inspiring her to get serious about her own future. Maybe this was a turning point for her. "I have an early meeting tomorrow," I said around 11, yawning. "Don't stay up too late." "I won't," Emma promised. Got a job application to finish anyway. I went to my room, placed my new corporate credit card in my desk drawer where I kept important documents, and fell into an exhausted sleep almost immediately. The last thing I remembered was feeling grateful for my family and hopeful for the future. I had no idea that in just a few hours, that future would shatter completely. The persistent buzzing of my phone dragged me from sleep at exactly 7:15 in the morning. Groggily, I reached for it, squinting at the screen through bleary eyes. 6 text messages, 3 missed calls, and 4 email notifications, all from my bank and credit card company. Unusual activity detected on your account. Purchase authorization. Emirates Airlines, $6,5. Purchase authorization. Burj Al Arab Hotel, $4,2. Do you recognize these transactions? Reply yes or no. Suddenly wide awake, I sat bolt upright, heart pounding in my chest. This had to be a mistake. I never made purchases that large, and certainly not for international airlines or Dubai hotels. My first thought was identity theft, some faceless hacker who had somehow gotten my information. With shaking hands, I called the number on the back of my personal credit card. After verifying my identity, the customer service representative confirmed my worst fears. "Yes, Miss Anderson, we're seeing several large purchases beginning at approximately 2:30 this morning, all in rapid succession. The card was physically used, not just the number. Would you like me to read the full list of transactions?" Physically used. That meant someone had my actual card in their hands. But how? It was safely in my desk drawer, wasn't it? "Just a moment," I told the representative, putting the phone on speaker as I scrambled out of bed. I yanked open my desk drawer, rifling through the folders and documents inside. My passport was there, my birth certificate, tax forms. But the sleek black corporate card that had been placed there just hours earlier was nowhere to be found. "Miss Anderson? Are you still there?" "Yes," I replied, my voice suddenly hollow. "Please continue with the list." The representative proceeded to detail purchase after purchase. First-class tickets to Dubai on Emirates Airlines. A luxury suite at the Burj Al Arab Hotel. Shopping sprees at Gucci, Louis Vuitton, and Cartier. Dinner reservations at exclusive restaurants. In total, just over $20,000 had been charged to the card in less than 3 hours. "I need to report this card stolen," I said, a cold dread settling in my stomach. After completing the fraud report, I hung up and immediately tried calling Emma. No answer. I called again, straight to voicemail. A third attempt with the same result. "Emma?" I called out, walking quickly to her bedroom. "Emma, we need to talk. There's been a problem with my card." I pushed open her door to find an empty room. The bed was made, which was unusual in itself. Emma never made her bed. But what sent ice through my veins was the open closet. Hangers empty where her favorite clothes had been. Her makeup bag missing from the bathroom counter. Her phone charger gone from the outlet. On the pillow was a hastily scribbled note. "Needed a break. Back in a week. Don't worry. Love you." Don't worry? $20,000 was missing from my account. My sister had disappeared in the middle of the night, and she was telling me not to worry? With trembling fingers, I opened Instagram. There it was, posted 30 minutes ago. A selfie of Emma and Sophia in what was clearly an airport lounge, champagne glasses raised to the camera. The caption read, "Dubai bound. First class living with my favorite cousin. Sometimes you just need to treat yourself." Number living my best life. Number first class, number Dubai. The comments section was filled with friends expressing excitement and envy. Not one person questioning how a barista who couldn't afford rent was suddenly flying first class to the Middle East. I sank onto Emma's bed, my mind racing to process what was happening. My sister had stolen my corporate credit card while I slept. My sister had booked an international luxury vacation with funds that weren't hers to spend. My sister had committed fraud, identity theft, and betrayed my trust in the most egregious way possible. Part of me wanted to scream, part wanted to cry. But the strangest part was the calm, detached voice in my head saying, "Are you really surprised? Hasn't she been building to this for years?" I returned to my room and called my boss, Richard. I couldn't put this off. $20,000 of company money had just been spent on unauthorized personal expenses, and I was responsible for that card. "Richard," I said when he answered, struggling to keep my voice steady. "I have a situation with the corporate card." To his credit, Richard listened without interrupting as I explained what had happened. When I finished, the silence stretched for several seconds before he spoke. "Have you reported it to the credit card company?" "Yes, immediately." "And you know who took it? You're certain?" "It was my sister," I confirmed, shame burning in my throat. "She's already posted photos from the airport. She's with my cousin, on their way to Dubai." Another lengthy pause. "Becky, you know I need to inform compliance and legal about this." "I know," I whispered. "We'll need a formal statement, and you'll need to decide if you're pressing charges. The company may make that decision for you if the funds can't be recovered." Pressing charges. Against my own sister. The thought made me physically ill. "I understand. I'll come in right away." After hanging up, I sat motionless on the edge of my bed, trying to make sense of my churning emotions. Betrayal. Certainly. Anger. Definitely. But beneath those was a profound sadness. How had our relationship deteriorated to this point? When had I become so blind to who Emma really was? My phone buzzed with a text from Jenna. Saw Emma's Insta post. Didn't know she was planning a trip. "Want to grab dinner tonight since you have the place to yourself?" I stared at the message, unsure how to respond. Should I tell Jenna what really happened? Would she say I told you so about enabling Emma? Would anyone understand the complicated mix of rage and protectiveness I was feeling? Before I could decide, another notification appeared. A direct message on Instagram from someone I didn't know. Your sister looks amazing in Dubai. She told us all about her amazing financial analyst sister, who wanted to treat her to this trip as a thank you for all her support. You're so generous. Can I be your sister too? Lol. I closed the app, feeling sick. Emma wasn't just stealing my money, she was stealing my reputation, painting herself as the supportive sister and me as, what? The guilty older sibling trying to buy her love? As I got dressed for the inevitable difficult day ahead, I noticed my reflection in the mirror. I looked exactly the same as yesterday. Same brown hair falling just below my shoulders. Same blue eyes, now shadowed with stress. Same face that had smiled with accomplishment just hours before. But everything had changed. In the space of one night, my relationship with my sister had been fundamentally altered. My hard-earned professional reputation was at risk. And the future I had felt so hopeful about was now clouded with uncertainty. I gathered my things and headed to the office, calls to my parents going unanswered. Perhaps that was for the best. What would I even say to them? All I knew for certain was that when Emma returned from her stolen vacation, nothing would be the same between us again. Some betrayals cut too deep for easy forgiveness, and 20,000 reasons stood between us now. The next few days passed in a blur of meetings with the corporate legal team, human resources, and my increasingly concerned boss. I provided statements, filled out paperwork, and answered the same questions repeatedly. Yes, I knew who took the card. Yes, I had attempted to contact her. No, she wasn't responding. Yes, I understood the seriousness of the situation. Each night I returned to my empty apartment, exhaustion seeping into my bones. Sleep eluded me as I checked social media compulsively, watching Emma document her stolen vacation in real time. There she was at the top of the Burj Khalifa, captioned, "Living the High Life." There she was on a desert safari, on a yacht, at exclusive nightclubs. Each post was a fresh wound, a deliberate flaunting of her betrayal. I sent message after message, alternating between pleas and demands. Emma, you need to come home immediately. This is serious. Do you have any idea what you've done? This is a corporate card. It's theft. Please just call me. We can figure this out. The company is talking about pressing charges. This isn't just between us anymore. All met with silence, or worse. Read receipts showing she had seen and chosen to ignore my desperation. Sophia was no better. When I finally reached her through a direct message, her response was infuriatingly casual. Chill out, Becky. Emma deserves some fun too. Not everyone wants to work themselves to death for corporate America. We'll sort it out when we get back. As if this were a simple misunderstanding about borrowing a sweater without asking, not grand theft. By the third day, the credit card company's fraud department had escalated the case. The investigator's voice was professionally sympathetic, but firm. Miss Anderson, we need to know if you're planning to file a police report. Without one, it becomes more difficult to dispute these as fraudulent charges, especially given that the suspect is your sister and you know her whereabouts. I sat at my kitchen table, staring at the wall. If I file a police report, what happens next? The police would investigate, and if they find sufficient evidence, your sister could face criminal charges for credit card theft and fraud. Criminal charges. Emma with a record. Emma potentially in jail. Can I have 24 hours to think about it? I asked. Of course. But I should warn you that the longer we wait, the more difficult recovery becomes. After hanging up, I called Jenna, no longer able to carry this burden alone. She did, what? Jenna exclaimed after I explained everything. Becky, you need to report her. This isn't a small mistake. This is a calculated crime. She's my sister, I said weakly. Who stole $20,000 from you? From your company? She knew exactly what she was doing. This wasn't impulsive, she planned it. She waited until you were asleep, took the card, and had all these purchases ready to make. Deep down, I knew Jenna was right. The premeditation was what hurt most. Emma hadn't made a split-second bad decision. She had orchestrated this betrayal while pretending to celebrate my success. What about my parents? I asked. I've tried calling, but they're on that seniors cruise with limited connectivity. They get back tomorrow. And you think they'll take your side? Jenna's tone was skeptical. Becky, I love your parents, but they've never held Emma accountable for anything. Why would they start now? Her words stung because they contained an uncomfortable truth. My parents had always minimized Emma's transgressions. When she took money from Mom's purse as a teenager, it was just a phase. When she borrowed my car without permission and returned it with a dented fender, I was told to be more understanding. Even when she dropped out of college after I had helped pay for her textbooks, they insisted she was finding her path. That evening, a new round of Instagram posts appeared. Emma and Sophia shopping at high-end stores, bags with designer logos displayed prominently. The caption cut me to the core. When your sister finally recognizes all you've done for her and treats you to the vacation you deserve? Number blessed, number family love. The comments were even worse. You have the best sister ever. Wish my family appreciated me like this. You deserve every bit of this luxury, queen. And then, a direct message from someone I'd never met. Your sister told us how you're always putting her down and making her feel worthless because she doesn't have a fancy career. Glad to see you finally acknowledging her worth with this trip. Actions speak louder than words. I stared at the message in disbelief. Emma wasn't just stealing my money. She was systematically destroying my reputation, painting me as some kind of emotionally abusive sister who had to buy her love and approval. The final straw came when I arrived at work the next day to find Richard waiting at my desk, his expression grave. The CFO wants to see us, he said quietly. There's been an issue with the card transaction disputes. In the meeting that followed, I learned that Emma had apparently called the credit card company herself, claiming to be me and attempting to withdraw the fraud claims. Fortunately, she had failed the security questions, raising additional red flags. Becky, the CFO said, leaning forward, I understand this is a difficult family situation, but the company needs to protect itself. We're going to need you to file a police report today. My heart sank, but I nodded. I understand. I'll do it immediately. That afternoon, I sat in a police station, formally accusing my sister of theft and fraud. The detective took my statement matter-of-factly, explaining the process moving forward. We'll need to interview her when she returns. Given the amount involved, this could potentially be charged as grand theft, which is a felony. I felt hollow as I signed the paperwork, wondering how we had arrived at this point. The sister I had bathed as a baby, taught to ride a bike, helped with homework, was now the subject of a criminal investigation because of me. On my way home, my phone rang with my parents' number. They must have returned from their cruise. Becky? My mother's voice sounded concerned. We just got back and have 15 missed calls from you. Is everything okay? I took a deep breath and pulled my car over, knowing this wouldn't be a short conversation. No, Mom, everything is not okay. Emma stole my corporate credit card and spent $20,000 on a luxury trip to Dubai with Sophia. The silence that followed was brief. What are you talking about, honey? Emma told us you gave her the card as a gift. She called right before we boarded the ship, so excited that you were treating her to this trip. Of course she had. Of course she had created an alibi, knowing exactly when our parents would be unreachable for verification. Mom, that's not what happened. She took it from my desk drawer while I was asleep. It's a corporate card for business expenses. I could lose my job over this. There must be some misunderstanding, Mom said, her voice taking on that familiar defensive tone she always used when Emma was in trouble. Emma would never steal from you. She loves you. I've filed a police report, I said flatly. You what? My father's voice suddenly replaced my mother's, loud and angry. You reported your own sister to the police? Over a misunderstanding? Becky, what were you thinking? It wasn't a misunderstanding, I insisted, tears of frustration building. It was theft. She's posting all over social media, spending thousands more each day, ignoring my messages, and telling people I gave her the card because I treat her badly and needed to make up for it. Well, you haven't exactly been supportive of her finding her own path, Dad replied, his tone accusatory. Always pushing her to be more like you, to follow your timeline. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Somehow, even in this situation, I was being made into the villain. Dad, she committed a crime, a serious one, against me and against my company. This isn't about different life paths or timelines. This is about right and wrong. Family stands by family, he stated firmly. You need to drop these charges immediately. We'll sort it out when Emma gets home. I can't do that, I said, my resolve hardening. Not this time. Then don't expect us to take your side in this, he replied before hanging up. I sat in my parked car, the phone still in my hand, feeling more alone than I ever had in my life. My sister had betrayed me, my parents had abandoned me, and my career hung in the balance. That night, Emma finally responded to my messages with a single text. Got a call from the police? What, the fuck, Becky? I thought you were cool with this. Told everyone you wanted to do this for me. Now I look like a liar, thanks a lot. No apology, no acknowledgement of wrongdoing, just concern for how she looked to others. It was at that moment that something shifted inside me. The desperate hope that this was all a misunderstanding, that Emma would come to her senses and make things right, finally died. In its place grew a steely determination. If my family wouldn't stand by me, I would stand by myself. If they wouldn't acknowledge the truth, I would force them to face it. Emma would be home in 3 days according to her itinerary. And when she arrived, expecting the usual pattern of excuses and enablement, she would find something very different waiting for her. It was time for consequences. I heard the key in the lock exactly 1 week after Emma had left. 1 week that had aged me years, transformed my understanding of family, and hardened something inside me that had previously been too soft, too yielding. She walked in with the casual confidence of someone who expected forgiveness without apology, rolling a new designer suitcase I had never seen before. Her hair was highlighted with expensive-looking streaks, her nails freshly manicured, and shopping bags from luxury brands dangled from her arms. Hey sis, she called out, as if returning from a routine grocery run rather than a stolen international vacation. The Dubai humidity did a number on my hair, but otherwise, it was amazing. You should totally go sometime. I sat at the kitchen table, hands folded, watching her. Hello, Emma. Something in my tone finally made her pause, looking at me properly for the first time. Why are you looking at me like that? And why did the police call me? Did you seriously report your own sister? $20,000, Emma, I said quietly. You stole $20,000 from me. She rolled her eyes, dropping her bags on the floor. God, you're so dramatic. I knew you were good for it. And it's not like you can't afford it with your fancy new job. Besides, you never do anything fun with your money. I just helped you spend it on something worthwhile for once. It wasn't my money to spend, I replied, my voice steady despite the anger building inside me. It was a corporate card. For business expenses only, you committed fraud against my company. For a brief moment, uncertainty flickered across her face. Then she shrugged it off. Well, how was I supposed to know that? You should have explained that better. Explained? Emma, you took it from my drawer in the middle of the night while I was asleep. That's theft. You didn't ask permission. You didn't give me the chance to explain anything. She flung herself onto the couch with a huff. You're blowing this way out of proportion. I'll pay you back. Eventually. With what money? I asked. You can't even pay your own rent. I'll figure it out, she snapped. Stop treating me like I'm irresponsible. The sheer audacity of that statement after what she had done left me momentarily speechless. Before I could respond, Emma pulled out her phone. You know what? I'm calling Mom and Dad. They'll tell you you're overreacting. Go ahead, I said calmly. They're already on their way over. 30 minutes later, my parents arrived. Mom immediately went to Emma, hugging her as if she were the victim in this scenario. Dad stood awkwardly in the living room, looking between us. Becky, he began gravely, we need to discuss this as a family. Involving the police was completely unnecessary. Was it? I asked. Because Emma stole $20,000 from me and my company. That's a felony, Dad. Stop saying stole, Mom interjected. Emma made a mistake. She misunderstood. There was no misunderstanding, I insisted. She waited until I was asleep, took my card without permission, and spent thousands on luxury items while ignoring all my attempts to contact her. Emma's eyes filled with tears, right on cue. I had seen this performance countless times before. I thought you meant it when you said you wanted to celebrate your promotion with me. You said we should do something special, and I thought this is what you meant. That's a lie, and you know it, I replied flatly. I never said anything remotely like that. Becky, Mom gasped, don't call your sister a liar. But she is lying, I insisted. There was never any conversation about her using my card or going to Dubai. Dad stepped forward, his expression stern. Enough, Becky. I know you're upset about the money. But family is more important than money. Emma made a mistake, but she's your sister. She would never intentionally hurt you. She didn't just hurt me, I explained for what felt like the 100th time. She committed a crime that could cost me my job. This isn't about hurt feelings. This is about serious legal consequences. Stop pretending, Dad said dismissively, waving his hand. She would never touch your money if she thought it would cause real problems. You're making this bigger than it needs to be. I looked at my family, gathered in my living room. Mom comforting Emma, who continued her tearful performance. Dad minimizing a felony theft, as if it were a borrowed sweater, returned with a stain. All of them expecting me to follow the familiar script, get angry, vent, then ultimately forgive and forget because that's what family does. But something had shifted inside me during the past week. A lifetime of enabling had led directly to this moment. And I was done playing my assigned role. I smiled. The expression was so unexpected in the midst of this tense confrontation that they all fell silent, staring at me in confusion. What's so funny? Emma asked suspiciously. Nothing's funny, I replied, still smiling calmly. I just find it interesting that you all seem so certain about what happened and what should happen next. Because we know you'll do the right thing and drop these ridiculous charges, Dad stated confidently. Family protects family. That's exactly right, Dad, I agreed, nodding. Family should protect family. So I have to wonder who was protecting me when Emma stole from me. Who was concerned about my career, my reputation, my financial security? The question hung in the air unanswered. But that's all beside the point now, I continued, because there's something none of you know yet. The card Emma took, I said slowly, watching their faces carefully, wasn't my personal credit card. It was my new corporate card, issued to me for client meetings and business expenses only. Emma's tear-streaked face went blank with confusion. What's the difference? It's still your card. The difference, I explained patiently, is that the card belongs to Preston Global Investments, not to me. The difference is that it's monitored by a corporate fraud department that tracks every single purchase. The difference is that what you did isn't just theft from me, it's theft from a multinational financial corporation with a legal team of 30 attorneys. The color drained from Emma's face, but I thought, you thought it was my personal card that I'd just have to pay off myself? I finished for her. You thought there would be no real consequences beyond me being angry for a while. You thought, as always, that you could do whatever you wanted and eventually be forgiven because that's how it's always worked. I turned to my parents, whose expressions had shifted from righteous indignation to growing concern. The company's fraud department has already documented every purchase. They have the geolocation data from each transaction. They have the security footage from our building showing Emma entering my room at 2 a.m. and leaving shortly after. And they have her social media posts documenting how she spent the stolen money. You never told us it was a company card, Dad said quietly, the bluster gone from his voice. You never asked, I replied simply. You assumed I was overreacting, as always. You took Emma's side, as always. You minimized the harm done to me, as always. Mom had gone pale, her arm still around Emma, but her expression now worried rather than defensive. What does this mean? Legally, I mean. Before I could answer, my phone buzzed with a text. I glanced down to see a message from Richard. Corporate legal team requesting meeting tomorrow at 9 a.m. regarding card fraud case. Need confirmation of your attendance. I held up the phone. That's my boss. The company is moving forward with their investigation regardless of family feelings on the matter. This isn't just between us anymore. Emma finally seemed to grasp the gravity of her situation. Becky, she whispered. Genuine fear replacing the theatrical tears. What's gonna happen to me? That depends, I said honestly. The company could press charges for fraud and theft. Given the amount, that would be a felony. Or they might be satisfied with full restitution of the funds plus interest and penalties. But I don't have $20,000, Emma cried, panic rising in her voice. You had enough to spend $20,000, I pointed out. All those designer bags and clothes you brought back? The luxury hotel suite? The first-class flights? Those can be returned or resold. You can't be serious, Emma gasped. I've never been more serious in my life, I replied. For years, I've protected you from the consequences of your actions. I've made excuses for you, covered for you, bailed you out financially. And where has it gotten us? To this moment, where you thought it was perfectly acceptable to steal my corporate card and spend $20,000 without a second thought about how it would affect me. I turned to my parents. And you two have been just as complicit. Every time you dismissed Emma's behavior as just a phase, or told me to be understanding, you reinforced the idea that rules don't apply to her, that consequences are for other people. Dad started to speak, but I held up my hand. I'm not finished. Tomorrow, I'm meeting with corporate legal. They're going to ask me if I want to press charges personally, in addition to whatever action the company takes. I haven't decided yet what my answer will be. The silence that followed was profound. For perhaps the first time in her life, Emma looked truly afraid. My parents, usually so quick with justifications and defenses, seemed at a loss for words. Into this silence, Emma's phone rang loudly. She glanced at it, then answered quickly. Sophia? Yeah, I got home. Listen, there's a problem. I could hear Sophia's voice on the other end, though not her exact words. Emma's expression grew increasingly distressed as she listened. What do you mean they cut you off? Because of our trip? But you said, no, I didn't know it would cause such a big... Sophia? Sophia? She stared at her phone in disbelief. She hung up on me. What happened? Mom asked. Emma looked up, dazed. Sophia's parents found out about our trip, about how we paid for it. They've cut her off financially until she pays back her portion, they said. They said what we did was criminal. It was, I confirmed quietly. It is. But Sophia said it would be fine, Emma protested. She said you'd be mad at first, but eventually get over it because that's what family does. She said her parents pay for her trips all the time. The difference is they're her parents choosing to spend their own money, I explained, not someone stealing a corporate card in the middle of the night. Emma collapsed back onto the couch. The reality of her situation finally sinking in. What am I going to do? My father, who had been unusually quiet, finally spoke up. We'll help you, Emma. Your mother and I can contribute to paying this back. No, I said firmly, surprising everyone, including myself. No, you won't. Becky, Mom began, we're just trying to help. That kind of help is exactly why we're in this situation, I replied. Emma needs to take responsibility for her actions. For once in her life, she needs to experience the real consequences of her choices. I looked directly at my sister, seeing beyond the tears and panic to the person who had systematically taken advantage of my love and generosity for years. Here's what's going to happen, Emma. You're going to sell or return everything you purchased on this trip. Every designer bag, every piece of clothing, every souvenir. You're going to get a full-time job, not just part-time barista shifts when you feel like it. And you're going to set up a payment plan to reimburse the company for every penny you spent. And if I don't, she challenged, a flash of her usual defiance returning, then the company presses charges and I don't stop them. And you face the criminal justice system on your own. The starkness of this choice hung in the air between us. For a moment, I thought Emma might revert to her usual pattern of tears and manipulation. Instead, something unexpected happened. She nodded slowly, a different kind of understanding dawning in her eyes. I really messed up, didn't I? She asked quietly. It wasn't quite an apology, but it was perhaps the first genuine acknowledgement of responsibility I had ever heard from her. Yes, I said simply. You did. My phone buzzed again with another text from Richard. Legal says if full restitution is made plus documented repayment plan, they may consider not pressing charges. Need to discuss options tomorrow. I showed the message to Emma. This is your one chance. The company might be willing to accept repayment instead of prosecution. For the first time, Emma seemed to truly grasp the severity of what she had done. I'll do it, she said, her voice small but determined. I'll pay it all back. I'll get a real job. I'll fix this. I wanted to believe her. After a lifetime of broken promises and deflected responsibility, I wanted to believe this time was different. But I had learned my lesson about blind trust. We'll see, I said simply. Actions speak louder than words. The next month passed in a whirlwind of legal meetings, payment arrangements, and painful family therapy sessions. The corporate legal team, after much negotiation, agreed not to press criminal charges on the condition that Emma sign a legally binding repayment agreement and make an immediate good faith payment of at least 25% of the total amount. Selling her designer purchases covered about 30% of what she owed. She cried when handing over the Gucci handbag and Cartier bracelet to the consignment shop, but I felt no sympathy. These were the physical manifestations of her betrayal. Each item purchased with stolen funds and flaunted on social media to create a false narrative about her life and our relationship. My parents, to their credit, finally seemed to grasp the severity of the situation. After the initial shock wore off, Dad pulled me aside one evening after a particularly tense family meeting. I owe you an apology, Becky, he said, looking older and more tired than I had ever seen him. We've been unfair to you for years, expecting perfection from you while making excuses for Emma. I never realized how much damage we were doing to both of you. To both of us? I asked, surprised by this perspective. He nodded slowly. By holding you to impossible standards, we put too much pressure on you. And by never holding Emma accountable, we didn't prepare her for the real world. We failed you both, in different ways. It was the most insightful thing I had ever heard my father say about our family dynamics. The acknowledgement didn't immediately heal the hurt of years of unequal treatment, but it was a start. Mom took longer to come around. Her protective instincts toward Emma ran deep, and she initially tried to find ways to shield her from the full consequences of her actions. She offered to loan Emma the money for the repayment plan, which I firmly rejected. She needs to do this herself, I insisted during a tense conversation at their house. That's the whole point. But it will take her years to pay this back on her own, Mom protested. Yes, I agreed calmly. Actions have consequences. Some take years to resolve. That's part of being an adult. With her escape routes closed off, Emma had no choice but to face reality. She applied for full-time jobs, eventually securing a position as an administrative assistant at an insurance office. The hours were long, the pay modest, but it was stable employment with potential for growth. She found a roommate and moved out of my apartment, an arrangement that brought relief to both of us. Living together had become unbearable. The trust between us shattered beyond what daily interaction could sustain. The repayment plan was strict. 60% of her discretionary income after essential living expenses would go toward paying back the debt. The company's financial analysts had calculated the terms, ensuring they were feasible but not comfortable. Emma would feel the financial constraint of her choices for approximately 3 years. Sophia, predictably, disappeared from Emma's life entirely once the fun ended and the consequences began. Her parents eventually reinstated her allowance after she completed community service hours they had mandated, but the friendship between the cousins cooled considerably. Without the shopping trips and luxury experiences that had bonded them, they discovered they had little in common. At work, I had expected my reputation to suffer. Surprisingly, the opposite occurred. Richard called me into his office 2 months after the incident, once the repayment plan was firmly established. I want you to know, he said, that the way you've handled this situation has impressed the executive team. You didn't try to cover it up. You didn't make excuses. You took responsibility for securing your card going forward and made sure the company was made whole. I was just doing what was right, I replied, still uncomfortable with praise related to this painful situation. Not everyone does what's right when it's difficult, Richard observed. especially when it involves family. It shows integrity, and that's something we value highly here. The family therapy sessions, which had begun as a requirement of the legal agreement, revealed deeper issues than I had anticipated. Our therapist, Dr. Lawson, skilled at navigating family dynamics, quickly identified the problematic patterns. What we're seeing, she explained during our third session, is a family system that assigned rigid roles early on. Becky, you were cast as the responsible achiever who needed little support. Emma, you were allowed to remain dependent and shielded from consequences. And your parents, instead of adjusting these roles as you grew, reinforced them until they became prisons for both of you. Prisons? Mom questioned, looking offended. We were just recognizing their different personalities. Were you? Dr. Lawson asked gently. Or were you putting so much pressure on Becky to be perfect that she never felt she could fail, while simultaneously expecting so little from Emma that she never learned how to succeed? That session ended with both my parents in tears, a first in my experience. They had begun to recognize how their parenting had contributed to our current crisis, an uncomfortable but necessary realization. For my part, I had my own difficult lessons to learn. Dr. Lawson helped me see how my own enabling behavior, while coming from a place of love, had contributed to Emma's sense of entitlement. You became a third parent to her, Dr. Lawson observed. Always rescuing, always fixing. That created a dynamic where she never had to develop problem-solving skills of her own. I was just trying to help, I defended. I know, she replied kindly, but sometimes helping actually hurts. True, help empowers rather than enables. Emma's journey was perhaps the most profound. Stripped of her enablers and faced with genuine accountability, she initially floundered. There were missed payments, forgotten therapy appointments, and tearful late-night calls begging for exceptions to the repayment plan. I remained firm, not from a place of punishment, but from the newfound understanding that this was what real love looked like. Not protecting someone from consequences, but supporting them through facing those consequences. Gradually, almost imperceptibly, Emma began to change. She started arriving at therapy with notes and questions. She set up automatic payments for her debt. She received a small promotion at work after 6 months, calling me with genuine pride in her voice, rather than complaints about the additional responsibilities. I actually like knowing I earned this, she told me during one of our now weekly coffee meetups. It feels different than when things are just given to me. It was a small comment, but it represented a seismic shift in her perspective. The relationship between us remained fragile, trust rebuilding in tiny increments. I no longer shared financial details with her, kept my important documents in a locked safe, and maintained healthy boundaries around what support I would and wouldn't provide. Emma, to her credit, respected these new boundaries. She never asked to borrow money, didn't show up unannounced at my apartment, and listened more than she spoke during our interactions. The dynamic between us shifted from parent divided by child to something closer to true sisters, equal in different ways. I'm sorry, she said one evening, 6 months after the Dubai incident, as we sat on a park bench watching the sunset. Not just for taking the card, but for everything before that too. For taking advantage of you. For expecting you to always fix things. Thank you, I replied, accepting the apology but not rushing to say it was okay. Because it wasn't okay, and pretending otherwise would only perpetuate old patterns. I don't know if you can ever trust me again, she continued. But I'm trying to become someone trustworthy. That's all any of us can do, I said. Try to be better tomorrow than we were yesterday. As she left to catch her bus home, I watched my sister walk away, her posture straighter than before, her steps more purposeful. The path ahead of us would not be easy or straight, but for the first time, we were both walking it as adults. 6 months turned into a year. Emma maintained her job, earning another small promotion. She never missed a payment on the repayment plan, occasionally adding extra when she received bonuses or tax returns. My parents continued their own journey of self-reflection, making visible efforts to recognize my achievements without placing excessive pressure on me, while holding Emma to appropriate adult standards. The family therapy sessions eventually reduced from weekly to monthly, then quarterly check-ins. Dr. Lawson remarked on our progress during what would be our final regular session. "When you first came to me," she observed, "you were a family in crisis, locked in destructive patterns that had persisted for decades. The transformation I've witnessed is remarkable, though I know it hasn't been easy for any of you." She was right. The journey had been painful, forcing each of us to confront uncomfortable truths about ourselves and our relationships. For me, it meant acknowledging my own role in enabling Emma's behavior and recognizing the resentment I had harbored toward my parents for their unequal treatment. For Emma, it meant the difficult work of building adult capabilities that should have been developed years earlier. Learning to budget, to solve problems without running to others, to sit with discomfort rather than seeking immediate relief. For my parents, it meant confronting their own biases and the damage their well-intentioned but imbalanced parenting had caused both their children. My career continued to flourish at Preston Global Investments. The integrity I had demonstrated during the credit card crisis, as Richard called it, had earned me respect from the executive team. I was assigned to higher-profile clients and included in strategic planning meetings well above my pay grade. "We see leadership potential in you," the CFO told me during my annual review. "Not just technical skill, but character and judgment." I accepted these compliments with newfound grace, no longer feeling the need to deflect, praise, or qualify my achievements. This too was growth, learning to acknowledge my strengths without apology. Jenna remained a steadfast friend throughout this period of transformation, never once saying "I told you so," despite having warned me about enabling Emma for years. "I'm proud of you," she told me over brunch on the anniversary of what we now referred to simply as the incident. "Setting boundaries doesn't mean you don't love someone. Sometimes it's the most loving thing you can do." As for Emma, our relationship had transformed into something I had never expected. Not the close sister bond I had always hoped for, nor the strained obligation it had sometimes been, but something new. A relationship between two independent adults with healthy boundaries and mutual respect. She had found her own friends, built her own support system separate from family. She had discovered an interest in graphic design, taking night classes while continuing her day job. There was a new confidence in her demeanor, not the artificial bravado of her Dubai posts, but something quieter and more genuine. "I like who I'm becoming," she shared during one of our now monthly sister dinners. "For the first time, I feel like I'm building my life instead of just waiting for it to happen to me." My parents, too, had evolved. Dad had joined a father's support group, something I never would have imagined from my stoic, solution-oriented father. Mom had started volunteering as a mentor for young women entering nursing, channeling her nurturing energy in healthier directions than overprotecting Emma. The debt was now half paid off, ahead of schedule. Emma never complained about the payments, even when they meant saying no to outings with friends or delaying purchases she wanted to make. "It's actually been good for me," she admitted, having to really think about every dollar I spend, knowing that actions have consequences. I should have learned that lesson a long time ago. There were still difficult moments. Family gatherings could sometimes trigger old dynamics. Holidays brought stress that tested our new boundaries. But we had developed tools to communicate more honestly, to name the patterns as they emerged rather than falling unconsciously into them. For my part, the most profound change was internal. The weight of responsibility for Emma's well-being had lifted, a burden I hadn't fully realized I was carrying until it was gone. I discovered space in my life for new experiences, new relationships, new aspects of myself beyond the responsible older sister, the perfect daughter, the reliable employee. I traveled solo to Japan, something I had always wanted to do but had put off, partly from feeling I couldn't spend money on myself when Emma might need it. I joined a rock climbing gym, surprising myself with a newfound love of physical challenges. I started dating more openly, no longer subconsciously choosing men who needed fixing or guidance. One evening, as I was preparing dinner in my apartment, now truly my own space decorated according to my tastes alone, I found myself humming. A simple act, but one that signified a contentment that had been missing for longer than I cared to admit. My phone buzzed with a text from Emma. "Just made the 18th payment. Only 18 more to go. Never thought I'd be proud of paying a debt, but here we are. Thanks for not giving up on me." I smiled at the message, typing back a simple but genuine response. "Proud of you too. Keep going." The truth was, the incident that had seemed like the end of our relationship had actually been the beginning of a healthier one. The $20,000 theft had cost us both a great deal. But what we had gained in return was, perhaps, worth even more. Not blind trust, but earned trust. Not enabling, but supporting. Not dependence, but interdependence. Real love, it turned out, looked different than I had thought. Sometimes it wore a stern face, held firm boundaries, allowed natural consequences. Sometimes the kindest thing you could do for someone was not to rescue them, but to believe they were strong enough to rescue themselves. As I looked out my window at the Boston skyline, I reflected on the question that had haunted me during the darkest days of this journey. Can a relationship survive such a profound betrayal? The answer, I now knew, was both yes and no. The old relationship, built on unhealthy patterns and unequal expectations, could not and should not survive. But a new relationship, forged through difficult conversations and consistent actions, could emerge from those ashes. Not perfect, but perhaps more authentic for having weathered the storm. The debt Emma owed the company would eventually be paid in full. But the lessons we had all learned about love, accountability, and genuine support were dividends that would continue paying out for the rest of our lives. Have you ever had to set a difficult boundary with someone you love? Drop a comment below sharing your experience. If this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe for more insights on family dynamics and personal growth. Remember that sometimes true love means allowing natural consequences rather than constant rescuing. Thank you for joining me on this journey, and may your own relationships be strengthened by healthy boundaries and authentic connection.